presented by Dano Seasoning. Yum, yum, get you some.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Sun Belt Syndicate. Very excited to be able to bring this one to you tonight. If you're a Cajun fan, you're already familiar with our guest of the hour tonight, or hour and a half, or 40 minutes, whatever Cory wants to give us, we're going to let him give us tonight. But yeah, welcome to the show, Cory. Before we get fully in with him, thank you to our sponsors, W Energy, Fanplex Graphics, TSN Off-Road, Dano's Seasoning, and we can't forget the wonderful people that allow us to do this, to bring to you guys, collegefootballdogs.com. So be sure to check them out, as they're writing a lot of stuff for Senior Bowl down there in that Mobile area. And we know Mike Green's been going off, former Marshall defensive end.
Yes,
coming off. Yes, he is absolutely lighting up Twitter. So if you haven't been on there in a day or two, good luck scrolling through the same video of him plowing through somebody many, many times. So welcome into the show, Cory. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. I know we've been kind of following along your journey, but we're going to ask you a bunch more questions about it tonight and kind of see where everything stands. But first and foremost, man, personally, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Let me tell you that the pleasure truly is all mine to be here and talk to you guys. A pretty big moment. I've been talking a lot to local news and our own fan base. So it's, so great to be able to talk more about, this campaign to guys from a completely different fan base and school and state. And, just goes to show how cool and fun and exciting this idea is. So believe me, the pleasure is all mine.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. We definitely are. I want you to go over the pronunciation of your last name, because as I told you guys before we went live, I learned a little something new about TJ's last name. So you can both kind of go off on that for just a second, because I would have absolutely butchered it. I'm not going to lie. So please correctly pronounce your last name for everyone else to be aware as well.
So we found out that me and TJ are Creole adjacent.
Adjacent is the key word.
Adjacent, as Creole, as TJ wants to put on the record. But Sanois is how you say my last name. The Saint is Saint in French, and you don't pronounce the T in it. So it's Sanois.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I got a little bit of Creole lineage, French Creole lineage, and my last name is actually pronounced Corman for y'all who have been listening to me for 2 years. That's actually not Corman, but in the States and as just a regular black dude, which is how I identify, it's just Corman, but it actually is pronounced Corman.
But I told TJ, he can claim his Creole side at any point, just come on down to the bayou. We're waiting for it.
I got you. Actually, surprisingly enough, I actually have family in Louisiana, Mobile, Abbeville, where else? Mobile, Abbeville, New Orleans. Got a bunch of family members in New Orleans. Almost probably a good third of my family is actually from or lives in that area.
I'm telling you, I know your people.
I know.
Come on down.
You are not actually in Lafayette at this point, though, right, Cory?
Actually, I am.
You are? Okay.
At this very moment, I am. I'm finishing up my last semester at Columbia. I only have one class. It's remote. And my fiance is from Abbeville,
nice.
Based in Lafayette. So might as well, be with her while I'm finishing school and, honestly save a little bit of change, because New York isn't getting any cheaper.
That is a fact.
Yeah. How often do you have to get back up to campus? Is it routinely, or is it just sparingly? Because
this is really my only semester that I've been remote. I've been up there for 2.5 years. So I'm going to be up there in March, come back in April, and then basically spend the end of April to May doing my thesis defense and graduating and all that. So,
wow.
Yeah. I'll be here just long enough to cause up more trouble in the city of Lafayette.
Oh man, yeah, that seems to follow you around with this.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about me, but I don't know. If I see a problem, I just feel compelled to do something about it. So here I am.
Here you are.
Hey, it's gotten you on the biggest Sunbelt show I'm just kidding. It's probably not even.
We got you on a Sunbelt show.
Hey, Sunbelt. There you go.
That's pretty big to me. That's pretty big to me.
We are expanding the horizons of the other folks who have not been following this journey as much. I hope to get a lot more people. I think we'll get to a graphic in a second, but before we do that too, tell the people, I mean, you are from the area. I believe I read that you were from Baton Rouge originally.
Correct.
Okay. And then you went to Lafayette, obviously. I mean, I don't know why you do all this work if you had no attachment to the school. So what years were you there?
So I moved to Lafayette to go to UL in 2012, and I fell in love with the city, the culture, the people, the food. I mean, even though Baton Rouge is just an hour away from Lafayette, it's just two completely different places, different culture, just approaching life. It's just different, and I like it here better. Completely honest. And I stayed in Lafayette up until 2022 when I had to move to New York for graduate school. So, not only did I fall in love with the people, but like I fell in love literally with a person here,
Yes.
I consider Lafayette a second hometown for me, if not my primary hometown. Since then, since moving to New York, I've gone on to make a whole short film in Cajun French, the first narrative entirely in Cajun French in decades. I've become fully a part of this Louisiana French renaissance that's going on in the southern part of the state right now. And on top of all that, I'm a proud raging Cajun. I went to a bunch of the games when I was here in the city, as a student and as an alum. That's part of the reason why I started this whole, Mascot campaign, because it's no secret that UL has some of the worst attendance across the board in games outside of baseball and softball. And we've been lucky just because the traditions there are built up, and we've just been successful, right? Jerry Klasko was a great hire that kept the standard of the program, and Allison Abetz is she's also just a great hire. So I consider us lucky that this void in in-game entertainment and connection to a younger fan base hasn't hit our diamond sports. But for me, it's like I see the bottom of the bucket. Like I see when this thing is going to, run out. And I'm seeing an administration just choosing not to look at it and continue to hope to be lucky. And that makes me scared. So Here we are.
That makes sense. I mean, so I guess, first of all, TJ, you got a question you want to jump in with right away?
No, well, yes and no. I wanted to know kind of where your inspiration came. I know you're obviously part of the institution, having done undergrad there, and then, obviously living there, falling in love there and all those kinds of things. But specifically, as it relates to giving back to the university, especially in the form of a logo, where did that inspiration come from? What made you want to kind of give that back?
The biggest message I've been trying to get out is it's hard, because I feel like, or I question, if this was a marketing firm doing this, would there be so much pushback? Sure. Because I've done as much work, if not more, than a marketing firm would have. And a marketing firm was definitely paid significant sum to create Cayenne, our previous spirit leader. But that failed. So when it came to the creation of Albineaux and this campaign, I have done my due diligence. I'm a professional artist. I graduated from UL with a degree in visual arts in a BFA, and my current MFA is in storytelling. Basically, it's screenwriting, but that's storytelling. It's building a character. It's creating a product that is sellable to audiences that they can connect with and can have longevity. That's what you want for a good film. So the same amount of work that I do with all of my films and all of my previous artwork, I've done with Albineaux too. I've researched different characters, I've researched different colors, I've researched why did the previous characters fail and what would work best for our university, for our community. And what I've just found is like an alligator is already here.
Right.
Like images of alligators are everywhere. They truly are everywhere because it makes sense because Louisiana actually has the most alligators out of any state. People would think it's Florida because of the Florida Gators.
And the Everglades, yeah.
Full statistic, Florida has 1.2 million alligators. Louisiana has 2.3 million alligators.
Wow.
That's how many are here. Add on, in the middle of UL's campus is Cypress Lake that has literal alligators in it. One of the things, they built a fence around it now, but one of the things that would happen.
Did you have to sign like a what is it called? A waiver to even go to the school so you don't fall down?
No, that was the funny thing. It's like when it would rain too much, the water levels would get high, and it wouldn't be uncommon for an alligator to get out of the swamp. It would be like, oh, hey, like some student would take a picture of it. It's like, there's a little alligator walking on the sidewalk right now. And then I don't know who the university would get to go put it back into Cypress Lake, but that's how prevalent they are within our campus life, within our culture, within our iconography, you know? So it just seemed like the obvious choice that we've just been circling around or avoiding for so long for uniqueness sake. But, you know, you can have a spirit leader that is a literal turd, and that would be unique, but that wouldn't be good.
Right.
I mean, as a trained artist, I know the line between unique and good and how far unique can push you before it gets in the way of being good.
That is a fact.
Yeah. And the Cajun man attempts before, was that something you said, you know, obviously didn't last very long. Cayenne, I feel like, was maybe the closest that I've seen since being aware and following the Cajun team and school. But it seemed like some people loved it, some people hated it. It wasn't really a full send, I guess, is kind of the way I'd say it. But
yeah. I mean, honestly, if Cayenne was here today, I wouldn't be doing this. Like, if the university had anything, I wouldn't be doing this. This wouldn't be a thing. People would just hate Cayenne. But obviously, things were bad enough that Cayenne needed to go. And now that he's not here, what are we doing thereafter? I mean, yeah, the Cayenne had 3 different costumes. Most people don't even know about the first costume because it was just that bad. And that was after the school spent, you know, over 20 grand on a marketing firm to build Cayenne and basically change his whole image. And then had to spend more money to get a second costume that looked demonic, and then had to spend more money to adjust that costume. So that's, you know, one of the reasons why they ended up moving away from it, because it was just he was a money pit. I mean, it's hard. It's Lafayette literally is the most Catholic city in America per capita, like versus population. So you have this basically walking red demon of flames trying to play with kids. You know, we're teaching them about the devil. What color is the devil? Red. Where does he live? The fireplace. So we have this you know, anamorphic pepper that looks more like a devil than anything going around in our predominantly Catholic Christian community. I can see where, you know, some.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I can see what it would be. So going through, I assume name is Albino. Is that the inspiration for the red eyes? And with Albino, is he going to remain sort of the white skin on the sideline? Like, what are we doing as far as building the persona and character of who Albino is? So
there's what I imagine Albino and what I give to the fans to do when he's here, you know. Just from his, you know, I've thought about his name one, going off the failures of Cayenne, is that in order to really send home that he's a hot pepper, they added orange and yellow into our school's colors. And our school's colors are vermilion and white. They're red and white.
Right.
but we needed this orange and yellow just for this spirit leader, just for the heat thing. It was just bad. It was just bad. Right. So I was like, okay, what can fit into our already established brand? A character that is presenting white and can just put on red and white. Boom. So going off of my research of like an alligator, it fits into our iconography, white alligator. All right. So more research and development. You're going to have people, for whatever reason, you're going to have people be like, oh, another white character for a multinational, multi-ethnic university, even though it's a white gator. I was like, okay, how about an albino alligator who is presenting white, but technically doesn't have any pigment? And that can be representative of really, even though we're called the Raging Cajuns, this is a multi-ethnic, no pigment is before each other. It represents all of us. Add on, there's this cool opportunity. A lot of people enjoy, the uniqueness of being Raging Cajun. I really, really like the idea of some form of just advocacy for just being different. Albinism is a genetic condition. Some call it disorder, some call it a sickness. But to me, it's just something that makes someone different.
Yeah.
Or just any animal different. And albino alligators pretty much all of them have been found exclusively in Louisiana. And
that I did not know.
Yeah. It just fit into this lore of just like this fully fleshed out character that embraces its difference and what people would perceive as something that holds it back, but it powers through that, because that's also parallel to, the Cajuns who were kicked out of Canada for what they were and then had to settle in Louisiana and start a new life. And in the face of being different, of speaking French and being Catholic and being from another country. So I saw just a lot of parallels and opportunity for storytelling with an albino alligator. And making sure that you can't run away from this thing that's part of him by naming him albino. You can call him Al. Some people say Albineaux. That works too. But yeah, I just really love this character that it's just like, yeah, I'm different. So are Cajuns. So what? Let's go. And then
I just
go there.
I don't want to interrupt, but I love the name and how you just explained how it literally flows with what you just described with the name. It's not like, okay, we've got this dog and we're going to call it something random just to have a cutesy name. Like, no, this fits perfectly. It's spelled the way you would assume the Cajun spelling of the name would also look, but it literally includes albino in the description of the name. The thought process that you went through to incorporate that and make it like seamless. Like, it's not like, oh, this looks jumbled and not like something I would want to attach to. I immediately love the name when I see it written down, and the fact that you can also shorten it to make it easy for other people outside of the community who are not going to know the full name. They're just going to call him Al. Why is he called Al? Now you've got an amazing backstory to tell people about this mascot that has a simple name to most people on a quick glance, but there's so much more to it than that. And that's why I immediately was like, this is blowing me away. I mean, can I ask you did you involve anyone else, or was this really truly like your own concept from start to finish here?
I would say like 97%. Every now and then someone would say a skit. I'd be like, okay, that's a good skit. But as far as like the design, his name, that was all me. That was all me, and just research and making sure I cross my T's and dot my I's.
Nice. How's the how's the school taking a liking to it? Like, what's been the reaction? And I know that's a hot button question, right? Which is why I'm asking it. Like, what's been the feedback? What's been, and also shout out Adam Kasuf. He just chimed in and said football is the devil. Any possibility of Gator themed jerseys like Florida did? Those are wild.
Hopefully never. Hopefully never.
You are specific to the mascot design, not the jersey design, right?
Right. We do mascots only over here. But yeah, no, going back to the question. So what's been the reception? What's been the feedback or pushback? How's this been taken?
I don't know if the Raging Cajun fan base has ever had something so divisive. It's honestly truly amazing. Because change is hard, right? Sure. And we're fairly fresh identity. Like from most of our school's history, there were the University of Southwestern Louisiana, USL, and there were the USL Bulldogs, and it became the USL Raging Cajuns, and then they became the UL Lafayette Raging Cajuns, and now there's us who are like, we're the University of Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and we have to define that identity. But those of us who never went to USL, we're still young working professionals. We don't hold the power when it comes to the university. It's the generation above that who are still fighting and clinging on to the previous identity. So that's what's been making it so divisive, right? The university is actively trying to stymie my campaign. That's not me saying that is on record. They're the ones that have put my GoFundMe campaign on pause. That's on record from GoFundMe. So I see, and this is all because they deem my campaign as a threat to the brand, which I find funny because I think if someone wanted to change the LSU Tigers, no one could, right? The brand is that strong. Same thing for Georgia Bulldogs, Texas Longhorns, right? If your brand is strong, a little old fan asking for a few bucks to make a costume for an 18 to 22-year-old to be in wouldn't be that much of a threat. But that's not our brand. The brand is growing, but it is weak, and they're afraid. It's albino is something that they are deathly afraid of because they know once the suit gets here, they can't stop it, right? Yeah. Because they don't want to do anything. They said that they are actively not doing any pursuit of a spirit leader. Again, it would be one thing if they're like, oh, we're going to do it in this time and da-da-da.
Like we have our own thing. It's set up.
Yeah.
But they don't.
But they don't. And they said that they don't. And, they've said multiple times now that they don't. That's the only reason they said that is because I was doing the thing. But what do you attribute that fear? I mean, you use the word fear. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to throw that word around loosely because I don't mean fear in its traditional sense. But what do you think the pushback is from? Like, why do you think this is so widely, fought against? Why would anybody want to not have a mascot or not have a spirit leader? I truly don't know. I just don't know. I can imagine that state not having Yosef on the sideline. Yeah, right. I mean, it's like them holding on to something that's not there anymore. Right. It would be different if the Bulldog was still here. It would be different if Cayenne was still here. But there's nothing. Yeah. So it's what are they fighting for? They're fighting for nothing. And I just truly don't understand. The people who make the decisions, the UL Office of Communications and Marketing, the head of the office doesn't have a degree from UL. That's wild. They have a doctorate, but none of their degrees are from UL. They're undergraduates from Auburn. I'm an alum. I would say decently accomplished alum who has put in. I'd say more than decently, but has put in work that marketing company. They would pay marketing companies tens of thousands of dollars for the amount of research that I've done. But.
And I want to drive home the fact, too, because I don't know if we've specifically said it. With this campaign, all you're doing is providing the spirit leader. You are not trying to change the name of the Raging Cajuns. That's not a part of what you're trying to accomplish.
Not at all. I love the name Raging Cajuns, no?
Yeah, exactly. I think some people may see a gator and think, oh, he's trying to change the name or the nickname of the school. That's not at all a part. No. You're leaving that. You're just adding to it. And I think, from the outside, from people that haven't been following as closely or just learning about this now, there's no aspect of this about a name change. It's solely providing the spirit leader. As you can see, 13 of the other 14 schools within this conference currently have a mascot in costume on sidelines for sporting events, except for the Cajuns. And actually, technically, shout out to the Georgia Southern Eagles, as Gus's birthday is today. I didn't plan this, but yeah, on the Mascot's birthday, we're doing a mascot show. But they also have two. I mean, technically, they have Gus there pictured in the costume, and they actually have an actual eagle. At some point, do you think they'd ever capture an albino gator and have him on the sidelines too?
Dude, I don't know. I'm just trying to get the suit.
One thing at a time. Let's focus on
I know.
One thing at a time. Part of the stuff that, always imagining, and I've thought so much about why a white alligator specifically. A lot of things, a lot of universities, you see a statue of their spirit leader, right? At Coastal Carolina, there's a giant chicken, right? And at UL, we have nothing, right? A lot of these spirit leader statues, they're become part of the school's iconography. So imagine like a giant marble white statue near Cajun Field / Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium that people can post up with for graduation and tailgates and game days. Like it's fully thought out, like, hey, people just buy in. You can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Bring us up to branding speed with the rest of our conference peers and just the rest of college.
I was going to say the rest of the United States.
Yeah, I got one suggestion I would love to see if it comes to fruition.
Okay,
you remember the scene in the movie Hook, and it's the big gator that stands up.
Yeah,
a big albino gator with red beady eyes, 7 feet tall, that people can stand beside and take group pictures with. It would be a reason to go to visit the game for visitors. It's one of a kind. It would stand out. I mean, all of this just makes so much. It's like Adam just said. I mean, how do you push back against this? I want to know. I really want to know what the hang up is, other than we didn't come up with the idea.
I was just getting ready to say,
we don't want to let somebody else do it.
Yeah, that's the hang up. The hang up is we didn't do it ourselves. And it's coming from what they perceive as the outside. And it doesn't make any sense because Cory is quite, for all intents and purposes, inside. He's literally in-house, Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I truly don't know. We can speculate this and that. It's, it's also surprising. Like, I'm the one taking all the arrows, right? Like the university probably truly, if they weren't forced by donors who were getting pissed at my efforts, they'd probably just be like, let him do all the work, all this,
Right. Like somebody else is doing the work. We don't have to do it. Like
we don't have to do anything. But I think there's too many pissed off boomers that they have to do something.
Well, tell a little bit of the backstory again. I think there's a lot of people that aren't as familiar with some of the past mascots that you guys have had. Where did the chicken come from, right? I mean, this was a grassroots movement that came from nowhere, had really no direct connection to the school other than it was called the Cajun chicken. But tell people a little bit about that story and maybe how that helped you get into this thought process that, hey, I can do something like this as well because somebody else has already kind of done it in the past, and obviously not greatly thought out and well done plan as yours, but to some extent they just went and did it. It wasn't like the university asked them to.
Right. So brief history of after USL converted to the Raging Cajuns, they had a live bulldog mascot, and they're like, well, we're not the Bulldogs anymore. So I guess let's try to fit our new identity. And then they brought the Cajun man, which looked like a giant Michael Jackson turned Colonel Reb knockoff. And people are like, that's terrifying. So maybe not, because it looks terrifying. So after Mr. Cajun Man, a fan and alum named Russell Heim showed up to the games in a chicken outfit. And it's called the Fabulous Cajun Chicken. And Fabulous Cajun Chicken enacted skits at games, entertained kids, entertained fans. Did that for quite some time, and people fell in love with the chicken because he was funny. Russell was funny. It had a personality, and that's what you want from a good spirit leader. So Russell was the Fabulous Cajun Chicken until the university was ready to build a spirit leader that fit the new kind of University of Louisiana brand. And that's where they started investing in Cayenne. So the Fabulous Cajun Chicken actually showed up, made a game appearance, like the university brought him back for one basketball game. I think it was 2 years ago, something like that, either last year or 2 years ago, because he was such a fan favorite. And he was a fan favorite because, one, it had a personality. And two, it was organic. It was grassroots. And that's the biggest thing when it comes to so many of these college mascots. In my phase 3 campaign presentation, I cited different mascots. Syracuse Orange, their spirit leader is Otto the Orange, which is an anamorphic orange. That's funny, but fitting. And of course, they're the Syracuse Orange. Of course, they're going to have an anamorphic orange as their orange, right? Otto was unofficial for 17 years.
I did not realize that.
17 years. And he had to beat out other spirit leaders that the university was trying to force, because the university at first had a Native American mascot. So, they're like, that's not the vibe. And that happened around the 60s or something like that. So they're actually ahead of the curve. And then after that, a student in a fraternity, like his dad gave him Otto the Orange, and I think it was Sigma Chi that just kept, they just kept wearing Otto the Orange, while the university at one point, they brought in an orange gladiator, they brought in an orange wolf, they were doing all these things, trying to force a spirit leader when the students already chose it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was organic, but that took 17 years. And then eventually they adopted Otto the Orange, and now Otto the Orange is in the Mascot Hall of Fame, So it just happens to happen organically. The Stanford tree isn't even the official mascot of Stanford. It's the mascot of the band, because the administration was just like, we're just not going to have one. So the band does it. And then that's a good roundabout way of having a spirit leader. That's part of the iconography. Everybody wins.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even a good looking one. Honestly, it's kind of like a joke of a mascot. But like you said, it exists. People rally around it. There's merchandise made with the thing around, T-shirts and hats and all kinds of stuff. It's just, speak to that though, because there have been some people, I guess technically, is this trademarked or anything? Can anybody just print this?
Anyone can just print it.
People have done that though, right? There's students on campus that have been seen wearing OWL T-shirts and otherwise, merchandise essentially, right?
Yes. And that was great. That's the point. I don't want to trademark out, because I want the fans to have this. I think one of the big drawbacks with Cayenne is who can own an anamorphic pepper, right? If I want to show my UL pride outside of just buying a shirt and use the spirit leader, I'm not going to have an anamorphic pepper plushie, right? I posted that on my Twitter feed today of someone made their own albino plushie, a little white alligator, put him in a red graduate cap and gown next to UL degree. He doesn't even exist yet, guys. He doesn't even exist yet. This is all imagery. That's how good the idea is,
Yes.
And that's what the spirit leader represents. That's what albino represents. Is if you guys as app guys, it's easy to draw use of. You need a beard, in a hat, and like you can show your pride, and that's cool. Like it's cool that you can take that iconography, that character, and create so many different ways to show your pride. And that's just something that's been missing for UL fans for well over 20 years now, because that was really hard. Flaming pepper isn't that interesting, right?
Well, I think, like you said, if someone doesn't know what that is and they're presented to it, I think exactly what you said earlier. Like they're going to look at it as a demonic demon. They're not going to identify it as a pepper. There's nothing immediately. I mean, if you saw the bottom where it like curves a little bit, maybe you assume it's a pepper, but the top half of its head doesn't necessarily tell you immediately it's a pepper. It looks more like flames off the top of the head of the thing. And, again, like you said, imagery could be an issue there. This, I don't think, I mean, the most scary aspect of this is the red eyes, which I also think is probably the coolest aspect of this. Mm-hmm. And you have you've also incorporated Louisiana lore within that as well. What was the thought process of putting the fleur-de-lis? Is that
fleur-de-lis?
Fleur-de-lis. Okay. Does not pronounce the last little bit. That's what the French hit me with that. They just have some letters they don't quite pronounce.
Don't really do it. Don't really like some of those in letters.
But yeah, just explain the thought process of kind of including that, because I think that's a really cool touch. For those of you, I can make this full screen. For those of you watching, you can see on these top two, I believe it's on at least the top two there, he's got it within the eye of the gator itself, which is just a really cool touch, I think.
Yeah, it's also in the bottom left one as well, too. It's just really small.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just found opportunity for more individuality. A lot of people are like, oh, this is too much like Florida, the Florida Gators and all that. It was like, well, here's something. You can look at a white alligator here and you can see the fleur-de-lis in its eyes. And if I'm somebody of like, clearly that's not Florida, right? Like it has to be Louisiana. What else would it be? What else would it be?
Yeah.
What else can you make? What other character can you make and like see it from a distance? You could take away all the words, just see it from the distance. Be like Louisiana.
Yep.
Louisiana. And that's so powerful. That's so it.
Yeah.
And it's like Adam just said, oh, yeah, good question, Adam. How's it spelled? Albino or, albino?
It's the EAUX.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
It only makes sense. That's what I'm saying. It's perfect, right? Like it's
literally every single detail has been mapped out purposefully, thoughtfully, and it fits eloquently. Like it is exactly what it should be. And I'm not saying this, but I could care less about Louisiana. I'm obviously an App State fan.
We have your people.
Exactly.
Your family. You're saying that you're one of us.
That's right. But it makes sense, man. I mean, it is. I cannot for the life of me understand why there would be any pushback at all to this. I mean, let me rephrase. I understand from the perspective of the person who's creating it, aka Cory. I get why they would be pushing back against you. For a multitude of reasons. But from a does it make sense standpoint, I can't imagine there being any other rationale for why you wouldn't have this.
It just stays a mystery. My big thing is like, I'm going to nerd out a little bit, if you allow me to nerd out a little bit.
Yeah, what do you think? I nerd out a lot about football.
Do any of you guys play video games?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm a big Civilization fan. You ever heard of Civilization?
Yes.
TG, you ever heard of Civilization?
No, I don't play a lot of video games unless it's Madden, Call of Duty, or
it's got a ball or a gun. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. This is a ball or a gun.
Yeah. Show him this, TJ. He's doing a little bit more of this than the video game in aspect.
Well, there's this video game called Civilization. It's on its 7th iteration that's about to come out in about a week, actually. Very excited about it. But it's been the game is the name of the premise. You start off with just like one village and you take it all the way into this massive civilization that has multiple cities and an army and, building rockets and all that stuff. I'm a big history buff, so I eat it up. I love it. I bring up civilization because for the past two iterations, the developers have made pretty significant changes to the layout of the game. This iteration, Civ 7, being the biggest, right? I'm not going to bore you on the details, but basically when they announced that this change was happening, of course, the internet is like, oh, this is when I stop playing Civ. Oh my gosh, they're ruining it. Oh, this is going to be bad. Oh, I'll just keep playing Civ 7 or 6 or 5 or 4. And the big thing being like, or you can just wait and play the game or see other people play the game and you'll see how good it is. And that's usually what happens. This happens. There's all this big rush of like, oh, this is going to be bad. And then you see it in practice and you're like, okay, this is actually way better than what was established before. This is great. I never want to go back.
Well, and that's the same thing with anything, right? Sorry. It literally is. I was watching something on, and this is obviously not related, but you talk about change and how change affects people and those kinds of things. I was watching something that was on, I think it was on Instagram or Facebook, whatever social media platform it was, back in, I think it was the 70s, early 70s, maybe late 60s. They were trying to get people to stop drinking and driving. So they were passing this campaign about not drinking and driving. They were starting to make it a law that you can't have a drink and beer. And it was like they had these people on camera, and it was like, it's a shame a guy can't get off work and have a couple of beers on his way home. And it's like, now you think about it, it's like, that sounds insane. Like, why? No, you should. Well, or you could just wait until you get home to have beer. How far away do you live from work? Like, what are we doing? And so, like, but to them at the time, it's like, you're changing the whole way we think. Like, and to me, that's in part what is going on here. It's like, we've never had this. This doesn't make any sense. When 10 years from now, the people who weren't a part of this will say, well, it didn't make any sense to not have this. Like, imagine life without this.
That's always the case. That's always the case. Well, all this pushback, all this fear from the university, this community divide, Albino hasn't taken one step on the campus.
Right.
It would be a different thing if the suit was here and it was actually offending people or doing stuff or like soiling the brand. It's all images.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about that is that shows you how powerful it can and will be.
That shows how powerful. And that's just what I mean by the fear and the insecurity. It's because they know that. Yeah. They know that as soon as that as an 18-year-old to 22-year-old UL student, the moment they put on that white alligator costume, put on a just a blanket red jersey, because I can't use a UL jersey as per their request, but just put on a red sweater or something. The moment that happens, and we're at a half-filled, brand new Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium, they know it's over.
Yeah, absolutely.
They know it's over.
100%.
Well,
the moment that I put on a custom-built washboard and Albino gives a little triangle to a kid at a tailgate and they're having a little Cajun jam right there, it is over.
Yeah, and it's going to be that way forever. And like I said, and in 10 years, us having had this conversation would be foreign to another kid. It'd be like, why was this even a thought?
Exactly.
Well, and Warren makes a good point. Need all other Sunbelt schools to push it to the, I think he put UL administration, because that is what we need. I mean, as a competitor, I wasn't a direct competitor, but in a competition sense, I want to have something on the other sideline, right? Like, that's what you expect to see. That's what you want to see. What's funny is you guys both use kind of examples where the change is somewhat of a cultural change or a drastic change. What's funny is I don't feel like that's happening here. I actually think this is just elevating what does exist to a better level. This isn't a big sweeping change that you should be afraid of or concerned with. Because this is rooted by Cory's background, by the Cajun background, with Cajun themes, Cajun colors. I mean, it's we have four schools who are going to be bringing in new head coaches this year. It's not even the same realm as that, right? Like those are cultural changes and sweeping changes that are coming to football programs. This would be a huge addition that obviously exceeds football because, like you said, there's people who have no interest in athletics who could still attach themselves to this. Do you know how many people every year do a March Madness bracket and they pick the teams they want to win based on the mascot? Who do they like more? What's cooler?
Yeah.
This one's going to be at the top of the list for a ton of people, right? If you say Raging Cajuns, that's already pretty cool. If you add this logo, this look to that name, I mean, I don't know which school I'd pick above it. I'm not kidding. Like, this is that interesting of a logo and a mascot and an idea that I think exists out there. And I've seen some of the stuff about the Florida. Oh, well, you already have a team that's the Gators. Well, again, this isn't a name change. This is in addition to the name that already exists, which is already undefeated, right? I mean, Raging Cajuns is like instantly recognizable. So I don't get it.
Let me come at you from this perspective. And this is going to be a hot button topic. And there's probably going to be people that chime in and say, why did you have to bring this up and all of that kind of thing? But I think you know where I'm headed with this.
Mm-hmm.
How much of this do you so two parts. Mm-hmm. First part is, how much of this do you think it is what we've discussed already, which is the pushback and, sort of change and people being kind of stuck in their old ways? And how much of it do you think is the pushback is who it's coming from, i.e. a young black man? And do we want that type of influence on our university?
I wish my blackness came more into effect, honestly. Yeah. Because I would say the second most pushback is that he's just an albino alligator and that his name is Albino. Like, some people, like even parents of young, one of the biggest, wildest stories is that there's I'm in a Raging Cajuns football fan group on Facebook, and there's a guy who took a picture that shows that he gives $50,000 to the university annually, and he has like a small son with albinism, and he said that he would pool his donation if the university were to ever adopt this spirit leader, because albino is offensive to albino people or people with albinism. And none of it makes sense, right? Because if I'm being real with you, he was one of 2 to 3 parents who have children with albinism that hold this take that albinism, that the albino is offensive to people with albinism. And again, as an artist, I did my research, and some people have this perception that just the term albino is offensive. And that comes from people who don't really have a perspective on how pejorative words and derogatory words are formed, because in their everyday life, they don't really experience it. So, TJ, if someone were to call me black, I wouldn't be offended.
Sure. If
someone were to say I'm a black, I'd be like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, why are you calling me that?
Why you say that, right? So that doesn't make the term black offensive. Sure. Black makes it contextually offensive.
Offensive, yes.
Because it sounds dehumanizing. But people hear that the same way. It's not offensive. And I've conferred with this with the albinism community. It's not offensive to say albino. It's not.
It'd be like me saying you're albino instead of saying you're an albino.
Exactly. That is the major difference. That is the major difference between that is between an and just saying what a word, scientific description is.
I'm with you 100%.
But for somebody who just never had that experience, who doesn't think about that's still hard for them to understand. Even still, of like, if they've never had the experience of not seeing themselves represented in anything, right? Like, it's just hard. I can't find it in me of like why someone, a full-grown adult who's reasonable and has albinism, and here's a character that is proudly albino and has possibility for positive representation with albinism, having a problem with that.
Yeah, it's funny. Funny, I guess, isn't the operative word, but I liken it kind of back to when there was a pushback, against the Redskins because it was offensive. And it's not that, for me, at least my understanding from Native Americans, it wasn't that representation was offensive, right? Like the Florida State Seminoles is an awesome name because the Seminole tribe wants to be represented, but don't call me a Redskin.
Right.
Because that is not my nationality. That's not who I am. Right. So don't call me an albino. I'm out. I have albinism. Right. Or albino. Right. Like that's, to me, I would think representation would be appropriate in this sense, because first of all, on a lot of levels, when have people with albino, when have they ever been represented? When has it ever even been a conversation? How many times have you had, Dominic, a conversation with someone and that's even come up? I can't recall the last time I've even had this extensive of a conversation. Like I've seen albino and an albino person a million times, right? Never thought once they probably should be represented in some way. Never thought of it. Well, so this is giving you that opportunity now.
Yeah, I think back to I guess my in-laws and my wife lived in a neighborhood where they had an albino deer, and everybody wanted to see the albino deer. It's not right. Plentiful. It's hard to see. It's elusive. It's a really cool thing. Like they said they would get up in the window and watch it walk through, and it's just like elegant, right? Because it's like this thing in nature that doesn't exist often. And some people will never see that type of thing. I mean, it's exactly the opposite of what Cory is experiencing with that story. To me, it's crazy. Like I want to have something like this because it's rare, and it's cool because it's rare. It's not bad because it's rare. Like,
Right.
Don't be afraid of this. Embrace it. It's just crazy. It blows my mind, and just don't really get the fact that there's really any pushback. And that's why you've already done like a number of other podcasts that I've listened to and heard you talk and had interest in having you on here, because I like I'm the visual learner. So I like to put together a little bit more of a visual show. But it made too much sense to have you on here and explain so much more than what just appears in front of you. Because when you put history and context behind it, why it is the way it is, how it was done, why it was thought up in the first place, like it just sells it even more. Right? It'd be different if you came on here and was like, well, just like gators and it's red and white or vermilion and white because that's the school colors. Like, okay, that would still be cool, right? Yeah. But like this is a whole different history lesson that just has.
And evolved. Honestly, the first time I saw this, which I think we talked about it last season.
Yes.
Well, the first time you brought it up, I was like, oh, that's cool. Literally had no other thought behind somebody just made a gator albino, and because Lafayette's colors are red and white. And that was, to me, that was enough. Now, knowing the backstory and having known what you've gone through intellectually to come up with this and sort of putting the grassroots effort behind, now I've seen it for what it actually is. And not only did I like it then, now I love it because it makes even more sense.
Yeah. I appreciate that in both of you. I appreciate that. Like, this is also the longest conversation I've had on any podcast about this character. So the irony of that, is pretty funny. But I mean, we all just keep circling back to the same thing of like, oh, this is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Why isn't this already a thing? And not only is it, why isn't this already a thing? Why is the school actively fighting it? This whole week has been trying to fix the things that the school blew up, right? And try to blow up. But they can't stop me. They can't stop the fans appreciate, like, all the stuff. Albino has been painted at the Acadiana Center of the Arts in downtown Lafayette. I didn't tell them to do that. A fan did that. A picture of albino was put in the McDonald's across the street from campus. I didn't tell them to do that. I don't even know who did that. Someone else did that.
Right.
Someone made up their own plushie. They did that. A fan had his son make a custom shirt with albino's face on it. I didn't tell him to do that. He did that. You can go on UL's, fan base. You see people with either the albino banner or they have albino in their picture profile. I didn't do that. I didn't tell them to do that.
We still have albino on one of our loops.
I saw that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'm literally on Google right now, and there's pictures all on Google of albino. Right now, like in front of me.
Right now. The Pandora's box is open.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not sweating the university blowing up my things right now, because they already played their main card. Sending out fake cease and desist. I'm copyright infringement. Okay, I'll adjust things. But people want this. And there's an intrinsic problem that they're not going to fix.
Yeah, I agree.
In my history, I've been an activist before. I'm still an activist, but I was thinking about this on the way of setting up here to tell you guys about this, that in downtown Lafayette, there was this statue of this old Confederate general from the area that became more and more divisive every year, right? And I was a part of this coalition that really wanted the statue just moved from downtown Lafayette, where it was the most foot traffic and everything. And we waited from the moment that we first, set up a protest or anything. We didn't tear it down. We were completely civil. Just a protest of just like letting it known we don't like this. The moment we did that, it took 2 years. And then the mayor finally made arrangements to move it to a museum. And everyone's happy. But that's the method of being an activist. When you see a problem, you just let it know, and that problem's not going to go away, but it's only a matter of time before I'm right. If there's a problem, it's only a matter of time before the people that want to fix that problem are right.
Yeah, and what side of history do you want to be on?
Yeah, exactly.
Warren brings up a great point. He says, as a 72-year-old in Southeast Alabama, that's what we all need to get away from is the we, you, are blank. We are all people. I think that's a pretty good comment there from someone, again, not in the Cajun fan base. So he's just explaining that as an overall statement. Neil kind of pointing to what I talked about with the albino deer. Albino buffalo or great white buffalo is revered in Native American culture. So he's prized. And he's saying if he's correct there. And a quick shout out to Dominic Ambrose. He's doing some work for college football dogs down there in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. So nice. Great to check in with him. He saw that Mike Green demolishing up close and personal. So shout out to Dominic for chiming in from down there. So Cory, before we leave here, you did technically get a cease and desist letter, but
I didn't.
You didn't. Okay.
That was a fake story.
Okay.
So what they did was they sent I'm not authorized to use any of their copyright to the Mascot company, which is who I was working with to design the costume for Albino. So one, that's not a cease and desist, and two, it wasn't even to me. I didn't get anything. As per the head of marketing, I was let known about that letter as a courtesy. That is directly as a courtesy, right? So I didn't get anything. And they contacted GoFundMe to suspend my campaign, but I'm working with GoFundMe to fix that. And even if GoFundMe doesn't want to fix it, I'll just do a new season. I'll just move to a different crowdfunding. Or I might do them. Like, people want this, right? Yeah. They're, the university. It's just funny. Someone's job at Martin Hall on UL's campus one day was like, "Hey, go F his stuff up." Like, that was on their board that day. Yeah. That was funny. That's funny.
Admissions, ticket sales. Oh yeah, and go mess Cory stuff up.
Yeah. It's just like someone's job is like, go look at Cory's social media, see what his next move is, and let's go F his stuff up. That's going to be on the day board, and it's going to be on the board for a while. Let him keep coming.
Right.
It's going to be on the board for a while because people want this. I'm going to keep pushing. Albino's going to get here. So
to be clear, you have reached out trying to essentially do a presentation or send them this information to explain all of this, and they just haven't been open, correct?
It's one thing to not be open. It's another to just completely ignore. I reached out 3 years ago. I reached out every step and phase of the way. And again, I do not know if I was talking to you. I would be here talking to you guys if they had treated an alumni with respect from the first get-go, even through email of just like, hey, we appreciate your enthusiasm. We're not currently pursuing the mascot at this time, but we will in whatever future at some capacity, and we'll take public input. If that would have been the response from the first email 3 years ago, don't know I would be here today.
Wow.
But every step of the way, I've just been treated as a nuisance. And we have half empty stadiums.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, guys, all right, well, I'm not going to let someone who doesn't have a degree from UL dictate what I do with my degree from UL in regards to helping UL. So here we are.
Listen, man, we appreciate it, and we are in full support. Obviously, and there's not a whole lot we can do as college football and Sunbelt.
We'll keep so much.
Yeah, pushing, man, and we got our little audience, and we'll put our teams together and hopefully show as much support as we can for Albineaux, because I like it.
And you guys have already done so much. You've been supporters for quite some time now, and like I said, it's so ironic that the longest conversation I've had about the character has come on a podcast by some app guys. So our destinies continue to be intertwined. We were
on it over a year ago. we were with you for a long time.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. So again, I just really appreciate it. I appreciate anyone who's listening to this podcast and who vibes with the character and the campaign, and want to see just the Sunbelt elevated, because that's what Albineaux will do for our conference, and really round it out and have some really fun interactions with all the other great characters. Gus is great. Yusuf is great. The rest I don't really care to give credit to because we're beefing. But it is important, and like I said, I just appreciate everyone who's tuned in and listened, and spread the word. Because the university can't keep down the crowdfunding forever. They won't. So when it's back up, anyone, if I can just get $5, goes a long way. $5 from 40 people, 100 people, 200 people, goes a long way. It may not be the best thing, but it will be something.
You be sure to tell us when that goes live, because we will do our best to share it everywhere. Because I know that there's people, again, like my son saw this logo and he was like, whoa. I mean, like that was his first thing. So we don't have to keep selling that fact. We all know it's cool. There's no other, thing that would be thought about when you see this thing up close. I mean, the amount of iterations you have to offer too that people could choose from is insane, because they're all good. Is there any last words other than what you've just left us with you want to give the people before we say goodnight here?
Other than happy to be here, and go Cajuns.
Where can we find you? What platforms can we find you on social media?
On Twitter /X is Saint_Ewart. The best way for English. So Saint_Ewart. On Instagram, it's Cory Kinda. It's actually one of my best jokes, I like to say, because when you get a notification that I started following you, what does it say?
Cory Kinda follows you.
I like to state my minimal interest in everyone's life.
That's awesome. Are you running the Al account as well, or is that someone else?
I'm running the Albino account. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. so that there is an account specifically for him. So
yes, specifically for him. That is albino, how it's spelled with an EAUX out at the end. Albino _ the number 4 _ UL.
Nice. Yeah, be sure to follow those along. We hope to see a whole lot more from you, Cory, and we're all going to have a big party when this finally gets to the point where there is a mascot on the field.
Mascot party.
Mascot party. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Cory. We really appreciate it, and we will definitely be following along and hopefully see something in physical form very soon.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate you, man.
See you guys.